Welcome to the we're not June, November 9th, 2023 Inspiring Author Conversation. I'm Kathy Davis, Davis Creative Publishing, and today we'll be speaking with Nancy Giere about bundling your brilliance by turning your expertise into profitable online courses. That's the key word, profitable. First, I have a few logistics reminders. The call is being recorded, and you will receive a link to the YouTube video within about 48 hours after the call. Your attendance at these meetings serves as your permission to be seen in the recordings. Please mute yourself on your end to help us avoid some background noise. Also, please find your chat button down at the bottom of your screen. Be sure and type all your questions into the chat box, and we promise to end the call around noon or shortly thereafter. I'll be monitoring the chat box to help us make sure we get all your questions answered. Our theme for 2023 continues to be inspiring authors. Each month, we welcome guests who are either an inspiring author or as someone who helps to inspire authors by sharing knowledge, new ideas, opportunities, and wisdom. So please help me welcome Nancy Giere. Nancy is a course creation expert. She works with businesses of all sizes, from solopreneurs to Fortune 100 companies, and helps them turn their expertise into high-profit courses. She creates engaging, fun, and interactive programs that get results. Welcome, Nancy. I'm excited to have you here.
I am very happy to be here today.
I know course creation has been a topic of many conversations I've had over the last few weeks. What's the first thing that I need to be thinking about, and what's my biggest challenge that I might need to keep in mind?
The first thing that you want to think about is who your target audience is and what they need. Just like any other type of service, you want to be really dialed into where they are, what they need, and how then you're uniquely qualified to help them. And so you can close the gap between where they are and where they want to go. The biggest challenge that people often have is around, how do I take all my content and organize it in a way that's going to create not only a course, but a really positive experience?
I know that seems very overwhelming to me.
And everybody kind of faces that, like, oh my gosh, where do I start? Now, for the people in the room that are authors, you have a great place to start because you've written a book, and in writing a book, you had to put your content into a logical sequence. So if you have that, that's awesome. Then you step back and you look at your content and go, okay, now that I'm switching to a different delivery modality, what do I do to change it so that it will work in an online course format? Because certainly there's usually a fair amount of video in an online course. If you think about it, if we look at fiction, you read a book and then you go to a movie based on the book, there's going to be a lot that's similar, but there are going to be some differences because you have to accommodate for a different way of delivering the story, as well as it's more time bound. If you look at something, that's long, like, Gone with the Wind, we only saw part of that story, right? Much of it was left out because they only had a certain amount of time to be able to get it done. Now we're in the age of the binge watchable mini series, so you can have something go over a longer period of time, and so you can think about your course in that way too, and say, well, this is going to be several installments to get people from the first lesson all the way through to the end.
So I've experienced, and we've got a couple questions here.
Sure.
And there was one that I experienced one time, and there's probably a name for it, where let's say it's a 3-day event, maybe not sequentially. It may be, 1 day out of 3 weeks, or 1 hour and a half period on a day for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow it was evergreen, so that you paid to access these 3 recordings, and that was it, where you could watch them at whatever time you wanted to. and it's almost as if it wasn't live. Is there a name for that, or is there a
I don't know if I think there's this particular name for it.
evergreen kind of? It's kind of
It's evergreen content, but
Yeah.
it's they're making it available. Oftentimes people will say, well, I'm going to set this up and it's going to be available for these 3 days, and you can only get to it for 3 days, or you have access for a month, so they have pre-recorded content, and they'll limit the access period to it, or they'll set it up on a drip schedule where you have to finish the first module to get to the second module. So the access period may be longer, but in order for you to move forward, you have to actually show that you've completed a particular component.
The downside I saw to that was I had no way to ask a question.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that is the biggest challenge when you're doing something that's purely evergreen content. If somebody gets stuck, if somebody has a question, they can't get an answer to it immediately when they're in that frame of mind of like, I need help. Now people have started putting in bots to try to resolve that, but who hasn't asked a bot a question where it gave you a totally like unrelated answer? So go read this article. Did that help? No, it did not. I'm
exactly.
So that's one of the elements you need to be really mindful of, is when you create evergreen content, all of your instructions have to be really clear. So you want to do everything that you can so that people can keep moving forward. I remember working on a project several years ago. This was actually, it was a live event, and so it applies here too. We had written instructions for people to use doing an exercise at a table. When we tested the instructions, we found that we had to make several changes because the subject matter experts that helped us to write the instructions, there were things because of their expertise that they just assumed people knew, or they forgot that when somebody's a beginner, that they're in a different place. So we solved for it. We got it done. But when you've got somebody facilitating something, whether it's in person or on Zoom, you can handle whatever comes up. But when it's evergreen, then it's more challenging. I've seen people do something like they'll have office hours, so it's kind of positioned up front that you can work through this program, and I'm going to be online every Tuesday from 9 to 10, so feel free to come and bring your questions.
Or perhaps hire your assistant to sit in and answer questions while.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
That's one way.
That's a great idea.
Couple questions we've had is there a typical common number of sessions and length of sessions, and how does one determine the cost?
In terms of the number of sessions and the length, the content really drives how long each segment will be. And you want to look at, when you're creating your content, how much is there, and step back and say, what's the information that's really essential and that people need to know? And that's really the main path that people will go through in your program. Now, you may have other great content that's perhaps more enrichment content, and you can make that available, but make it optional. So, let's say somebody's looking at a program about marketing, and they're going to look at social media, and the place that they want to hang out is LinkedIn. They're not going to care about Facebook or Instagram, because that's just not where they go. In terms of pricing, I wish there was an easy answer to the pricing question. That when you look at it, the place you want to start is what type of experience are you providing? Is it a really a transformational type of an event, or is it something that's more transactional? So if you're going to be working with people, and usually this type of content only works well having it be partially evergreen. But let's say you want to help people understand or learn about how have their experience to date shaped them as being a leader. There's certain things that people can do in an evergreen place, but in terms of kind of giving them feedback on well, what are you doing now and how can you improve? That needs to be more, I think, personal in a group, or perhaps one-to-one. So if you're doing something that is going to have a more transformational outcome, and you're combining doing evergreen and perhaps a group, that's a higher price point. You can be talking, starting there, 1,000 and up, maybe even 5,000, depending on really how long it's going to be. How long is it going to be? How much access do they have to you? And what is going to happen as a result of them taking the program? And you want to kind of align your pricing there. Now, there's other types of things that are more transactional. Let's say somebody wants to level up their skills in Microsoft Excel. That's going to be down on the lower end of the continuum. That's going to be the $47, the $97 type of program. You also want to look at who's your audience. So for example, I have a client now, much of her target market is single mothers. There's many instances where somebody who is a single mom is perhaps going to be more stretched financially than someone who has a partner. Whether you never know where people are economically, but this particular group probably is going to need to be in a $500 range for a lengthy program. So there's a lot of variables that come into play. I also think it's a great idea to sort of look and see what's in the market for the programs that you're offering, but also look at what other types of providers would the people that you serve be purchasing from. There's a good chance if they're going to spend, $1,000 with a colleague, they'll probably be able to spend $1,000 with you. So I know that's kind of a long answer, and it's not like the definitive exact formula,
Right.
but because like any pricing, any service, it's you've got to kind of take all those factors into play.
Yeah, and there's lots of variables in there.
Yes.
Nina has a few questions. Nina, can I unmute? Can you just unmute and we'll ask your questions, because you've got a couple, 2 or 3 here.
Let's see where to start. Shouldn't online courses be live the first time so you can get Q&A? And if there's, I'm making this up, if there subsequently you make the course available as sort of a recording, is there a way to have a question function that sends you an email so you can respond within 24 hours?
That's a really great question. I highly recommend that your first time out of the gate, when you're putting together your course, that you do it live and on Zoom, because then you can test your ideas, you can test out your content and really get solid before you go to the cost of actually doing the recordings. When you put together the program, you can have it set up where so you've got it on a platform and people are accessing videos, PDFs, whatever the content is. But you can put something in like the how to take this course, where you talk about, set the expectation for questions, email your questions to this address. We will respond within, whatever your service level agreement is. Is it 24 hours? Is it 48 hours? So if you set the expectation, then people, they know if I have a question, what's going to happen in order to have it answered. And I think they appreciate it if it's going to be coming from a real person, as I gave the bot example earlier. Now, one of the, I've been kind of on a little bit of a high horse about this. I don't know if that's quite the right expression. During the pandemic, a lot of people panicked because they thought, where's my business going to go? What am I going to do next? So the end result of that was many people created recordings of their webinars and pushed them out into the market as online courses. There's a difference from my perspective, between an online course and a recording. There's absolutely nothing wrong with selling a recording, but you want to bill it as such. And you want to say, here's a recording of an event that I did on July 15th, 2023. about creating courses. It was an awesome event, and I wanted to share it with you. Because we see when we're in the webinar, we're creating an experience. It's a container for the people in that Zoom room on that particular day. And questions are going to come up, and you're going to need to meet people where they are and responding to those questions. And it's that group's collective experience. When you take that and you send it out more broadly, the people you're sending it to aren't in the experience. They may be interested in some of the questions that people have, but they also may not be. The other thing that can happen in the webinar type of format is it's more conversational. And we may go off on a tangent. I don't know, it may be just me, but if something pops into my head, I am compelled to say it. And I may end up taking people in a little bit of a different direction. That's what that group needs on that particular day at that particular time.
So go back to what you said before. How do I make it an online course and not a recording?
Okay, so I'm glad you said. I was just going to go there, so I'm glad that you chimed in. So what you want to do is, after you do the webinar, pull the transcript, pull the written transcript, because it's easier to read the transcript than to watch it from end to end. You can do that more quickly. And look at the transcript and then rewrite it into a video script. And look at the content and say, are there, particular, what are the segments in terms of how I'm going to, what am I going to be able to extract from this and repurpose? And is there anything that I didn't cover that day that I would like to include? And then kind of work it through end to end. Then re-record it. When you re-record it, you're going to be crisper and you're going to be tighter. And the rule of thumb that I like to give people is say what you need to say in as few words as possible, so that you really are on point. So then you have your video where it's you on camera, and you can choose when you record. You can. Do you want me to keep going?
Keep going. Keep going.
Okay.
Please.
You can choose. So you can choose to record and have use slides. You can use and do voiceover slides. You can record on camera, and then I recommend you want to really, if you really want to bring it, really level it up, go into a studio and record in the studio. Mm-hmm. And the reason why you want to do that is it's a controlled environment. The lighting isn't going to change throughout the day. The sound is going to be really good. The lighting is going to be really good. And you're going to end up with a higher quality product. Now, for the course that I just did for myself, I deliberately recorded on a white wall, which then gave people, you can put text next to me on the screen. There's all kinds of things that you can do if you just are recording on this blank canvas. Mm-hmm. And it allows for a lot of repurposing for all kinds of reasons. So you start out, just kind of summarize this. You do your webinar, you get your transcript, you write your script, and then you go and you record, and then you bring in your visuals after the fact. That is the best approach to take for the video components. It's also going to be the most costly. So you really want to be ready to roll, if you will, if you're going to follow that format. Now, if for budgetary reasons, if that's just not going to work for you, do the best that you can to set up as nice of an environment as you can in your own studio, so that you have a nice, clean background, you have a good microphone and a good camera, and then you can work it from there. I mean, a lot of things, it all comes down to what can you do. And I think that is a level up from the recordings and can make a big difference. And so maybe you do that for your first round for your evergreen course. And then you come back, and then the next round is you go into and you record in the studio. And another way to think about it too is when you do your webinar, think about it like it's going to be an evergreen course, and come up with what are the different sections that you're going to want to cover, so that when you're doing it, you've got nice segmentation and you're taking people on a good journey. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm quoting one of your famous people in St. Louis, my good friend Lois Kramer, when I say, does that make sense?
Yes. I've spoken Lois's name several times today already. So is there a particular type of content that works best for a course?
For an evergreen course, we want to look at the content and think about how much practice does somebody need to do, and more importantly, how much feedback are they going to need? So let's say you wanted to do a course about presentation skills. There's a part of it that you could do in an evergreen format to talk to people about how to do a good opening, do a good closing. They can observe what all the elements are of a great speech or great presentation. But for them to really get good at it, they've got to, either deliver it on Zoom or in front of the room, and they need to get feedback so they can improve it. So that's what you want to really think about. So evergreen content is what can people do independently, and the feedback that they get can be just written or responses to a quiz. But if for them to get really successful, they need somebody to give them direct feedback, that doesn't really work well in an evergreen course. I know somebody, he bought a horse and he watched all these videos about how to take care of a horse. Let me tell you, that does not work well in a video format, because he went and he tried to put the saddle on the horse and it didn't work. It didn't go so well because somebody needed to stand there with him and walk him through it. The horse got kind of annoyed. I think the horse might have even bit him. So it's really, you have to think, it's really what type of feedback do people need?
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't need direct feedback from you to improve, you're good. If they need feedback, then you want to look at having that be done in another way. And in fact, now many people are using the term hybrid to talk about a program that is a combination of evergreen content and content live on Zoom and or live in person. Because we couldn't get the horse into the Zoom box. I just saying.
Exactly. So, and Nina has another question, back to the prior discussion that would apply to both evergreen and or the other types of courses. How do you develop a video script? And is there a reference or doc or website to refer for that information?
I don't have a specific reference, but when you write a video script, and I'd be happy to provide a sample of something that I've done that I can scrub, is you want to set it up around, well, how many people are going to be talking? First of all, is it going to be just you, or is it going to be a conversation? And what I do is I write the script in the left column, and then I write whatever type of visual or treatment is in the right column. So I'll have the running commentary on one side, and then I'll have me on camera, image of money falling from the sky, back to me on camera, B-roll footage of horses. None of this makes sense in terms of putting it together, but and the first thing you want to do is just write what it is that you want to say, and then I do a row in the table for each scene, if you will. So every time something's going to change on the screen, it's a new row in the table.
And Gail mentions that here in St. Louis, the city library, I guess that's the one downtown, provides a studio that can be used for free.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, there's several resources here in the St. Louis area. And Nancy, if you can get us a sample of that, maybe a one-page script that you were referring to, I can make sure that Julie or I get that PDF, and we'll make sure it gets distributed to everyone on the call.
To email that to you. I don't want to fumble around to find the file now, and I'm right from here. I'm going to the airport, so I'll get it to you in the next couple of days.
No worries. That would be great.
So
and then
on my to-do list now.
I know the feeling. What are some of the ways that I can make my course interactive and engaging?
Well, the first step that you can take to make your course interactive and engaging is you want to, for the video component, have the scenes change. Think about when you're watching a movie, a TV show, or even the news, everything's changing fairly quickly. So our minds are conditioned to scenes changing every few seconds. Then when people go to watch a training video, what happens? It's a lot of talking head.
Yeah.
Or people staying on a screen for a very long time. So just being able to make those transitions is huge. Now, I don't have it set up at this moment, but I use a product, I'm a Mac user called Ecamm, which allows me to set up different scenes. And then I have this hardware called a Stream Deck, which allows me to move from scene to scene to scene by pushing a button. So I'm just pushing these buttons and then things are happening and changing. And that's what I'm doing when I'm live. When you're working with a recording, it's great to drop videos in or your images in after the fact. And I discovered a really great tool called Descript, DE and then script. And really just about anybody can edit in Descript, because what you do is you upload your video and then you're editing in text. So if there's a part, let's say you recorded and you said, we're going to go out to dinner, and and then you pause because you didn't, hey, we're going to go out to dinner tonight at the town. So you can take that part, that your bobble, you can go into the text and you cut the words. It's like working in a document where you're deleting a line in a document, and then it cleans up the video for you. It also eliminates filler words. And if you have a lag between things, you can say, where there's a lag, cut it to 2 seconds or 3 seconds. It's a really powerful tool. And then you can drag in graphics. So you can do a fair amount with this tool. And, it's probably something you can have a VA could learn to do it. You don't necessarily need a video editor.
And that was called Descript?
Descript. And I don't have I'm not an affiliate, but I just made myself learn it last week. And I was totally blown away by what I was able to do.
And then the other name you dropped was Ecamm.
Ecamm.
If you're on a Mac.
Yeah.
So
there's things and then a good video editor can tell a story. But sometimes when you're working with an editor, you need to be real specific about what you want. You need to be able to say, these are the types of images that I want to have show up. I've bolded all the text that I want you to pop on the screen. So the more clear you can be in your instructions to the editor, the more quickly they can get the job done for you. Now, there are some people I know, they just want to turn it over to the video editor and say, just make something beautiful. You want to make sure that you've got a really good creative person that can do that for you. So that's the first thing to make your programs interactive. You want to try to keep the videos as short as you can. That's sort of anywhere, like around 5 minutes is good. But there's sometimes you're going to need to go longer in order to cover it. If you're getting on the other side of 15 minutes, then you maybe want to rethink and go, can I segment this? So that's the first thing from an interactivity standpoint. The second part is posing questions to your audience along the way. Give them something to do. So you can bring up, kind of cover a topic and then point them to a PDF where they'll complete an exercise. Give them a tool that they can use to apply to their work. So maybe you have a checklist that then they'll move along. The key is to have be changing up what's happening and going between video, going to a quiz, going to a document where they're going to work through something. Now, I've started building out for my clients in a tool called Articulate Rise. The license is very expensive, so if you're just kind of doing one-off courses, it's not a great way to go. But there's a lot of people like me that can build in this particular tool. And what's great about this tool is you can set up components that are interactive where people can engage with the screen. So you can have a flip card. So you could have terms on the front of the card and then flip the card over. And then the definition is on the back side of the card. You can create an accordion. So if you think about you build it like almost like you're building out a web page, and different things can happen. So the accordion can open and collapse, and people are engaging with the content. And what happens is, instead of reading, a 10-page document, it's broken into chunks and it's much more digestible, and you can make it very, very visual. I'd be happy to show, but I don't know how much time we have, and I wasn't ready to do a demo today,
No,
but I'd
that's
be happy
okay.
to do a demo another time, or just reach out to me and
So
I
it
can show
almost
you.
sounds like part of, if I were to come up with content, am I hearing you correctly in that the how-to topic, is that typically where somebody may start in creating an online course, is to use their how to do this, or like how to
Yes, that's the
beautify your
easiest.
garden, or
That's the easiest type of course to build out, where it's really how to step by step. That lends itself very nicely to an online course. It
And
could
then
be
what are some other topics in terms of, if we have how-to content, what would be the next level up?
I'm working with someone now who has it's really developing a spiritual practice. So she's got like 11 different parts that make up a person. So let's say one of them is self-worth. So she's going to talk about, here's the importance of self-worth, and then she's going to give people a personal reflection type of exercise. And then what's really going to be cool is giving people simple daily practices that they can put into because sometimes you can't go from being a hot mess to being this enlightened being, right? And this is really maybe the other end of the continuum when you're working with content like this. But what's going to be great is it's going to be, here's something you can do if you have 5 minutes. Here's something you can do while you're brushing your teeth. Here's some, so to kind of ease people into it. So you kind of start out with really kind of the how-to, then you can move into content that's more conceptual, more what things that they can think about. Like, let's say, well, in the whole publishing world, there's the how-to, there's steps that people can take all along the way. So you could take people from I've got an idea, kind of similar to what I do, it's idea to implementation. So what's that? That's more, it's how-to, but it's a higher level process. It's not, if that makes sense.
Yeah. There's
So
more
there's kind of,
detail. Yeah, because I heard you say a 3-step was offer content, and then an exercise, and then maybe some homework that they, it's interactive, but it's also kind of a long-term interactive. So like, I recently was at a conference, and one of the side booths out in the hallway was a woman offering yoga services. Well, I don't live in that town, and I was just kind of walking by her booth and realized she's all online. So she had created, I don't know, over 250 different videos of showing you how to do exercises, anywhere from, if you're, an advanced student, to here's 30 minutes if you have a bad knee. Here's 30 minutes if you have a bad shoulder, kind of.
Yeah. Here's how you do a headstand.
Yeah. And there were short videos where you paid a monthly fee, which was actually cheaper than what it would cost you to go to a yoga studio. And she has it set up so it's kind of a membership, and you go in, and you can go in as often as you want. You can go in every day if you want. And I thought, well, that's a fascinating business model. And she said it
really
started
is.
during during the pandemic. And, you know, she's out there just selling $49 monthly memberships. And she has this whole library of videos that people can look at.
And that's a great example where people can go and they can start creating a yoga practice for themselves, doing it in the do-it-yourself type of model. And you know, maybe some people may reach out to her and
she has that option. Yeah.
Right. So then, because I think there's, I'm not a yogi. I just play one on TV, but then like is there a particular form? Do you need to have a particular posture? And so perhaps having her watch them go through it, she can give them feedback on their posture, and then they're good and they can go back and do their thing. I think it's been fascinating how you can look at your content, but again, you have to think about that. Again, it's the degree of feedback and how you're going to do feedback helps you determine how to divide your content between what's the do it yourself, what's where you're going to have I'll do it with you, and then where's the do it for you kind of phase. So it's really testing it and seeing what could work, because I bet that a lot of people in that space thought there's no way that this could work online. And then they figured out how to make it work.
Yeah. So what are the main reasons that people decide to create a course?
It's really typically what I'm seeing is about scale. When I work with people that are in the coaching space, for example, there's only so many hours that you have in the day to work with people one-on-one or in a group. And there's usually certain guiding principles that a coach has, or particular concepts and ideas that they want their people to be working with. There's a coaching model. We're going to start with one aspect of your life, and we're going to work our way through. So what you can do is you can sort of extract that. You kind of look at it and go, what do I say all the time? What do I say so much that I wish I could just hit the play button and have this audio track run because I say it so many times? That's a really good indicator that that's the content that you can extract and turn into an evergreen course. Now, when you do that, you build it into your program. And I think this is the larger play and the better play for most people, unless you have a huge mailing list. Because what this does is you pull that out. People are working through that. So you'll say, I want you to go through the section about body image. I'm just making this up. And then there's going to be an exercise at the end of that I want you to complete. And then when we get together, we're going to talk about it. So what that does is the coach doesn't have to talk about what's going on with body image in a session, because the person's been able to go through that part independently. So you can work with them at a deeper level. Perhaps the time you spend with people can be shortened. Maybe you were working with people for an hour. Maybe now the session can be 30 minutes. You've got the opportunity then to potentially serve more people or have more time for yourself.
So Nina, I see that as a great model for something you can do. Nina's a financial consultant for newlyweds. Is one segment market segment that she has, and I can see where that would work. You do a little video and give a homework assignment, and then maybe they could call you for a follow-up appointment once you have them do part of their homework. And
yeah, it moves you then into doing more of the more time to spend on the analysis of their current situation. And provide recommendations.
Yeah, the challenge for me is that I let my security licenses go. So I'm calling myself a personal finance whisperer because I have a lot more content than just this one topic. So I can give some advice, but I don't really want to give investment advice. I want to give behavior advice on finance.
Sure, that works.
Terrific.
That's a good idea.
And then Nina, you had another question about, is it okay to start simple by using graphics or clip art in a simple course?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would use graphics and I would use icons. I would avoid clip art because clip art is probably, unless like the Bean people and some of the, you want to get as great visuals as you can. A site that I have found to be really great is called Storyblock. And Storyblock has a lot of nice graphics and it has a lot of nice B-roll footage. And the B-roll footage, it's part of the subscription. Whereas my other favorite site for getting just straight up images is Shutterstock, but Shutterstock charges a pretty hefty fee for B-roll footage, but you can get nice images, whether you want photos or illustrations from their site as part of a subscription. And I think it's worth it to me to get the best visuals you can within your budget, because when you think about it, this is all an extension of your brand. And it's, so how do you want to look and how do you want to show up to your clients?
And you also want to consider that if you add music, you want it to be royalty free.
Yes.
I work a lot with speakers and trainers and coaches, and you don't want to be the one that learns the hard way when the trademark lawyer knocks on your door and or emails you and says, oh, I saw this video, then you've got this music in the background and it happens to be Let It Be by the Beatles, and I represent the Beatles.
That's not good. I couldn't believe this. I had actually had somebody say she wanted to use some poses of people doing yoga, and she wanted from a book written by John Kabat-Zinn, and she actually photocopied the pages and sent them to me and said, let's put this into the course. And I said, did you get permission from John Kabat-Zinn? No, I didn't, but I'll just give him attribution. It's like, you can't take somebody's work and claim it as your own.
No. We've even had, I had a,
it's like, I couldn't even believe the question that was even a question,
I had
right?
an author who was not one of ours hand me their book and say, oh, don't you, I get that a lot. Here's my book. Don't you love it? And they had actually scanned the front cover of their high school yearbook and used that as their cover. And I said, you can't do that. And he said, oh yeah, it was real easy. I just stuck the book in the scanner and there it was.
It's
said,
easy.
No, let me explain how this
right.
works. Yeah, let me explain how this works. Now he goes, but I really like that photo. And I go, okay, but you didn't shoot it. So, and as someone mentioned in the question, is that graphics, clip art, music, if you didn't create it, there are several royalty free, as Nancy mentioned, several royalty free sources out there. If you need one, you can't find one, shoot me an email and I'll send you some links.
Great.
There's even, there's a one that we use quite a bit, which is very similar to Shutterstock, but a little bit cheaper. It's called 123RF, and the RF is for royalty free. They also now have a free section. Literally free. And Pixabay is another one that has all free photos and images. So there's several out there. You can just Google it or reach out to me through email. But yeah, I want to make sure, just also as a reminder, that if you've got a question, drop it in the chat box or raise your hand. This is all very fascinating for me. What has been the biggest change that you've seen since you've been involved in this, between when you started and where things are now with
Oh my gosh.
course creation?
Well, I started in this business 30 years ago. So I've seen a lot of change over time. And what's happened is that the technology has made it easier and easier for more people to create courses, which I think is a good thing. And it's also a bad thing, because the part that people miss in all of this is we get caught up in the technology and the visuals and da. But under the underpinning of it is, you want to have a really solid design and structure. The content needs to flow. It needs to be logical. It needs to be targeted. And, and that's been the core of everything. Some of the first courses that I ever created with technology were on a laser disc. Let's see, 5.5-inch floppy, 3.25,
Mhm.
right? So, and we had constraints with that. And so the distribution was a challenge. Then we move, welcome, Al Gore invented the internet, so thank goodness for that. And then we were able then to distribute content more broadly and update it, and you didn't have to worry about, do people have to send back the old,
Yeah.
So, but what in at the end of the day, the part that I find the most fascinating now is that people still are caught up in a lot of how we learned, which is a lecture. And we keep trying to put the lecture in, and now we're watching a lecture on a screen. And yet from the entertainment side of things, it's a different experience watching something on a screen. So where I'm seeing now is I want people to think about their courses like they're creating a show, like you're creating an experience.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Yeah.
And the next kind of, I've certainly, like a lot of people, I've been working with AI and coming up with prompts in AI. And now the kind of the next frontier that I think is going to be a game changer for people is moving into virtual reality, augmented reality, where, because that's a whole nother kind of way of doing something immersive. And it's probably a little bit far out now for entrepreneurs. It's working its way in use in the corporate sector. And that's usually where everything starts in the learning world. It goes on in the corporate world. And then people look at it and say, well, what can we do to take what we're doing in the corporate side and then bring it in a way that more people can leverage this technology? I mean, if you think, and I think AI is a perfect example of that. It's been out there, telling us what to watch on Netflix.
And now it's exploding.
Right?
Yeah.
Now it's like, and pretty much everybody's using it in one form or another. So, and I think that that's going to be so it's interesting how we have new technology and that makes our job easier, but yet, and you can think about this too, Kathy, from the perspective of the book, if the content isn't good, none of the glitz and glamour matters.
Yeah, if your first chapter sucks, no one's going to read the rest of your book.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you go to a movie or you tune into the next thing you watch on Netflix, you're going to decide fairly quickly, do I want to continue or not?
Exactly.
So
well, and I understand that you actually have a download that you're going to share with us. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So I put together, it's 8 easy steps to create training that sells. And it gives you the framework of the process that I use to go from end to end. And at a very high level, what is the course creation process?
So we'll put that link in our follow-up email when we have the link for the video. And any last words of wisdom, Nancy, that you could share with us?
But the thought that I want to leave everybody with is really be intentional about what you want to create. Think about who your audience is and where they are now and what you can do to either solve a problem or elevate them in some way. And then focus on what it is that you want to teach. And then look at how you're going to make it engaging and what can you do to have it feel like an experience. Whenever anybody travels, when they get back, or a comment about it is travel is the best learning experience. So what makes travel an experience? It's putting people into a different place. It's putting people into situations where they've got to solve problems, and they're in you're like putting people in a story. So really think about everything from that type of an angle. And I think you'll find that you'll have great success in what you do.
Very similar to what we tell authors is that what relief are you bringing to the table?
Yes, exactly.
And
It's
that
very similar. It's
yeah.
very similar. It's just a different delivery method.
It's just a visual and audible version together. So I greatly appreciate your insight today. Thank you, Nancy, so much for being
Oh,
here.
my pleasure.
And as a reminder, you'll receive that follow-up email within the next 24, 48 hours. And if you have any other questions, please reach out. We'll have Nancy's contact information in there, as well as the link to her free download. Thank you, Nancy. I greatly appreciate you. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you, everybody, for being here today. Bye-bye. See you next time.